Hello and welcome to Tea with a Therapist. This is session 14. My name is Phil Naylor. I am a therapist and I have brought tea with me here. Although I'm not going to lie to you, I have coffee today. So it is okay to have coffee as well if that's your chosen beverage. So some people bring various beverages to this setting, but tea is really the appropriate drink for the theme. I usually have tea. So once in a while I switch it up. Anyway, welcome to my session. Just a proviso that I'm a therapist, but this isn't therapy. This is just me talking, just kind of giving you information and education, hopefully about ourselves, about how we work, issues that we encounter that are common to a lot of people, and to educate people about psychological, things about personal change and development and the things that we struggle with. So thank you for joining me today. Just have a question. What do you think is the number one mental health issue? So some people may say, well, anxiety or depression or trauma or bipolar disorder or whatever. And now I don't know technically what, in terms of diagnosis, what is the most prevalent thing, but I can tell you the most prevalent thing that I deal with that is behind all of those things, and that is poor self-worth. That is the very kernel of all of those things. Especially so if you look at anxiety, if you really drill it down onto what people are afraid of, why are they anxious about this thing that's going to happen, why are they anxious about this upcoming issue or what might happen. If you really follow it down and keep asking the question, well, why does that make you anxious? Why does that issue make you nervous? It almost always goes back to some form of it'll show I'm not good enough. So, if we worry about a social anxiety that I'm going to go to this party and I'm going to not know what to say. And why does that make you anxious? Well, because then people will look at me like I'm weird or something. And why does that make you anxious? Well, then they'll reject me. And why does that make you anxious? And eventually it's like, well, I'll be not good enough. They'll be shown that I'm just not good enough, and I'll be exposed. And it's the pain of that usually makes people anxious. And if you follow that through to anything, I'm going to fail. If I take that job, essentially I'm going to fail. And if I fail, that means I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. And you can follow that in virtually any issue. Eating disorders often are about not being good enough, that I have to be perfect. That person's better than me in terms of their weight. I need to look perfect or I'll be rejected. I'll be not good enough. So many things trace back to negative self-worth. At the very heart of trauma is a deep self-worth issue. Anybody suffering with trauma? Also, I met a trauma person who doesn't have very poor self-worth, self-esteem. And the reason for that is often these things form in childhood. Our sense of self forms in childhood. When, especially pre-7, we are in development mode. We haven't fully developed who we are. We haven't developed our sense of the world and ourselves and other people, and we're in development of all those things. So we're taking in all kinds of information. We're also very egocentric at that time, which means that we say ourselves at the very center of the world, and we also haven't quite differentiated ourselves, our boundaries of who we are from the rest of the world as well. So we see ourselves as kind of connected to everything, and often kind of causally connected to everything. So it's not uncommon, for example, for small children, if parents are splitting up, that they somehow think it's their fault, that I must have done something to cause them to do this, even though it's got nothing to do with them. They attribute it to themselves because they attribute everything that's happening as somehow related to them and what's going on. So we'll tend to interpret, have this sort of primitive logic that attributes everything back to us. So if we don't get our needs met as children, which basically everybody doesn't at some point, because nobody can be there attending to your every single need at all times. But especially people who are profoundly not get their needs met. They're not given love. They're not given affection or support in the ways that they need it. The interpretation will be, it's because of me. There's something wrong with me, otherwise I'd get what I need. And unfortunately, some people get that actual messaging from parents or caregivers that, you know, you're bad, you're not good enough, you don't deserve this. And so that can be reinforced even more so. But anytime a need isn't met, or we have some sort of adverse experience, we think that it must be because of us. Because the logic goes, if my parents or whoever aren't meeting my needs, they're not giving me the love that I need, it must be because there's something wrong with me, or else they do it. So I would get the love if they saw me as valuable. If I'm not valuable, then they're not going to give me the love. So that's the sort of basic logic that we have around those things. So that gets built on as we go. That's just sort of a very primary example. But you know, anything negative experience, if we had some sort of abuse, if some horrible thing happened to you, something that somebody did to you, there's a few hallmarks of that create trauma, and that is somebody does something to you that you didn't deserve, that you are powerless to do anything about, and you feel helpless and overwhelmed and overpowered, and you didn't deserve it. So all those sort of factors are what can create a traumatic experience. And at the heart of that, again, is that how could somebody do that to me? It must be because I'm just not valuable, that somebody can see me as so low worth to be able to do that. Because they can do it, I must not be valuable. Those adverse experiences go right to the heart. And so often people that have had trauma, could be anything. It could be at war or anything. It could be things that they saw or things that they did do, and they feel horrible about themselves for that. That's what is ultimately at the heart of self-worth issues, and often what gets in the heart of self-harming, even suicide, that people feel that they're so unvaluable that they don't deserve to live. And that's why trauma survivor, there's a high rate of suicide amongst people with trauma. High use of drug use as well, because they're there to try and soothe and blank out the pain that they feel. So it's a deep, deep pain, this idea that we're not good enough, not valuable, not worthy. And we tend to interpret everything through that lens. If somebody rejects us, that's just reinforcement that we're not good enough. And we are afraid of our encounters with people because we'll get experiences of rejection and being found wanting and unworthy. So ultimately, when I'm dealing with anxiety, depression, trauma, virtually all mental health issues, we got to deal with that part. And ultimately, that's the part that people really have to work on to heal. That's the part that needs to be healed, is that idea of self-worth, that they're not good enough, that they're not worthy. And if any of you experience anxiety or depression or trauma, you'll probably find that is deep down at the heart of these things. There's other factors, of course, that fit into it, but that's a deep core pain. It's pain, basically. And to experience the idea that we're just not worthy or good enough is a very dark pain. And we avoid that pain at all costs. And so people that are perfectionists, they're perfectionists because they have to make sure that they can prove that they're valuable or worthy. People that are very competitive, sometimes they must be the best, or they're unworthy, they're not good enough. They're flawed, and they can't take that feeling of being flawed or that something's wrong with us. So we often get to that part in the work, that is the real work that needs to be done. Now, people that have good self-esteem and self-worth, everybody experiences that sense of they're not good enough. Usually it's the big things that will create that. We get fired from a job, or we lose a relationship or something, and we have this utter experience where somebody's actually saying, you're not good enough for this job, or this, you're not good enough for me, or something. So they get that message, directly, that, yeah, the reason why you're in this situation is you're not good enough, you didn't cut it. And so all of us can experience that I'm not worthy when those sorts of things happen. People with good self-esteem have had a good basis. They've had fundamentally a good upbringing, good support and good love and good experiences. So they have a resilience that's kind of built in, and is built in by positive experiences growing up and other things, and their experience of success in the world. So that is kind of an occasional thing that happens that they have to struggle with. Other people that have really struggled in their lives, that have really had a series of bad experiences when they're younger, very disadvantaged, very abusive situations, or had very hard situations, parent dying when they're young or something. All kinds of things can adversely affect us. Those people can very easily feel that pain of not worthy, and they carry that with them into almost every interaction, and it's just below the surface to feel that way. And so what do we do about that? So I'm saying that is behind almost all mental health and addictions. I think it was, there's a strong link between addictions and trauma. And there's a famous psychiatrist, Gabor Mate, worked in the sort of Skid Row area of Vancouver, and really, was really looking at what's causing people to be like this. And of course, high rate of trauma, and then with that, a very low self-worth. He actually said that sometimes the heroin addicts, they use that hit of heroin is the closest thing that they've ever experienced to love in their lives, that feeling. And so that's why that's so hard to give up, because they wouldn't experience anything that makes them feel good, that gives them any sense of a remote sense of love. They just don't have that. And that's the primary thing that is behind their addiction. So for some people, that's a very big piece of work. And where do we start with that? Well, this whole thing is a big subject, and it's often a kind of a long-term project working on this self-worth issue. But we basically has to start with the decision. You have to decide that you're valuable. Just like you decide to do anything. You decide to, get a new job. You decide to go out for a walk. You have to decide, I'm going to do this thing, or I'm going to do. This is deciding an attitude about something, attitude about myself. So you have to start with a decision that you are the one who gets to choose your worth. Because when it comes right down to it, we're always looking. At an earlier video, I talked about locus of control. And so we get stuck in the idea that other people have to give us our worth. It's the other people's affirmation and other people's recognition that will allow us to feel good about ourselves. Of course, that doesn't work, because even if you do get that from people, it might feel good in the minute, but you will constantly need that kind of reassurance if you have low self-worth. It feels good in the moment. If somebody gives a compliment, it makes us feel really good about ourselves, but it lasts like 5 minutes, and the next thing that comes along, we're there again. And that is because we ourselves don't believe it. Okay, we're the ones who have to believe this thing. And as long as we kind of keep putting that idea out into other people's hands about our worth, we're giving our power away. And also, we'll never get the cure, because the cure is out there in somebody else's hands. So we are the ones who have to start believing this. So we have to start affirming ourselves. We have to start to cultivate an appreciation of ourselves. We can do it with other people. We accept other people, flaws and all. and at least the people that we love, that we care about, our kids and our close friends. We know they're not perfect. Sometimes they irritate us a lot, but we still care about them, and their value is beyond all their flaws. So we have to accept that we are flawed and we have value beyond all our flaws. So that is, and sometimes I say we have to start with the place of accepting that there is something wrong with us. We're not good enough. We're not good enough, at least in lots of areas, because none of us are. We can always be something that we're not good at, and even if you are the best at something, that's only a very transient condition. You could be the gold medal gymnast or whatever. But not for long, right? Because you got the gold medal around here. You won. But the next Olympics, probably somebody else is going to. At least, a few years down the road, you can't maintain being the gold medal gymnast forever. You're going to age out, and you're going to, suffer a lack of, or your skills are going to deteriorate and all those sorts of things. So we age out of those things. You can't be at the top of the game forever. So somebody's always coming up to be better than us. But even if we are feeling really good about our skills as the gold medal gymnast, maybe we're really lousy in some other area, like we suck at music, and all our friends are musicians, and we feel stupid because we can't play anything or hold a tune, even though we're the gold medal gymnasts, and so we can feel inferior in that situation and not good enough. So we have to accept that that's the human condition, is to not be good enough in something. But the things that we care about that we're not good enough, we can actually do something about. So if I was a lousy musician, but I really cared about being a musician, I could really work at it, and I could probably become a half-decent musician, even if I had to work at it. So I can always improve my status on those things. And the things that we are not good about, that we don't care about, so if you're a gymnast and you don't care that you're not a good musician, well, you don't care. So it doesn't matter if you're not good at it. So we have to start by accepting that we're not good enough, that we are always in a state of flux in terms of relative to other people, how we're doing. So we have to sort of put all of that aside, and we have to just cultivate our sense of valuing ourselves. And you have to start by looking at what are the basic qualities that you have. Are you generous? Are you caring about other people? Where is all that coming from? That's just part of your spirit, part of who you are. And when you look at everybody that you care about, it's their essence, their spirit of who they are that you appreciate. And so you have to cultivate that sense in yourself. So that's easier said than done, I understand, but that's the starting point. That's where you need to start, is that your self-worth is in your hands. It's your decision to enhance your self-worth, to decide your self-worth. Nobody else can decide that for you. You have that power to decide it, and you're not going to find it in anybody else. You have to find it in yourself, starting with a decision, and you start to cultivate in a sense of appreciation and acceptance for who you are. You accept that you're flawed, and it's okay. It's okay, because everybody is, and everybody's no good relative to somebody. Okay, so that's the human condition. We accept others in that condition, and so we need to accept ourselves. So I'll be coming back to this issue more often in the future, because it is a touchstone behind many things. So if you really want to work on your sense of your mental health, work on your sense of self-worth, choose to value yourself, be appreciative of yourself, be grateful for the things in your life, and that's the starting point. So thank you for joining me. Next time, please bring some tea and enjoy this little chat every Sunday, basically every Sunday. Missed last Sunday, sorry about that. But please join me. If you enjoy this, let your friends know, or give me a like or a comment or something, and we will see you next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.